We hired a surrogate to give us a child. Instead, she gave my husband a reason to leave me. Now they're together, planning a wedding, and my baby is calling her mom. Welcome to Raw Reddit Tales. Subscribe to keep getting the spiciest stories. It all started when Daniel and I had been married for 8 years and still couldn't get pregnant. We tried everything. IVF, hormone shots, therapy, even prayer retreats. Every failed test felt like another funeral for the life we wanted. So when our doctor finally suggested surrogacy, it felt like hope was breathing again. That's how we met Emily. She was quiet, kind, the type of woman who made you feel safe the second she smiled. She told us she'd carried a baby for another couple once and loved the process. She said helping families made her feel useful in this world. That line stuck with me. I thought she was selfless. I thought she was a blessing. Daniel adored her instantly. Not romantically, at least not at first. He was grateful, protective even. He'd offer to drive her to every appointment, sit beside her during ultrasounds, and constantly ask if she was eating enough. I didn't see it as a red flag then. I thought he was just being a good husband, a good soon-to-be dad. But soon, her name started showing up in places it didn't belong. On his phone screen late at night. In conversations that had nothing to do with the baby. Emily said this. Emily likes that. Like she'd quietly slipped into our marriage and made herself comfortable there. When I asked why he texted her so much, he laughed and said, "She's carrying our child, babe. You want me to ignore her?" His tone was gentle, but there was something behind it, a new kind of defensiveness. That night, as I lay awake beside him, I felt it. The distance. He wasn't looking at me the same anymore. He wasn't even holding me the same. And somewhere deep inside, I knew something sacred between us had started to unravel. The more I tried to convince myself was all in my head, the more obvious it became that it wasn't. Daniel started spending more time checking on Emily than being home. He'd leave early for work and come back late, always with a story about how she wasn't feeling well or needed groceries. I used to be the kind of wife who trusted her husband blindly, but that trust was now hanging by a single thread. At first, Emily still acted sweet toward me. She'd call to update me about the baby's kicks or morning sickness. I appreciated her for that. But then she started dropping by unannounced, sometimes with Daniel, sometimes alone. She'd sit on our couch, rubbing her belly and talking about how connected she felt to the baby. I didn't think much of it until she started saying things like, "He's so protective of me. You're lucky to have a husband like that." Lucky. The word stung. One evening, Daniel came home with takeout. Her favorite, not mine. When I asked why, he said, "She wasn't feeling well today. I thought I'd bring her something." He didn't even realize how strange that sounded. I watched him text her as we ate, his smile faintly showing in the glow of his phone screen. It wasn't just care anymore. It was chemistry. And it was burning right in front of me. I tried to talk to him, told him I felt like something was changing between us. He sighed, rubbed his temples, and said I was turning something beautiful into something ugly. That hurt more than anything. I was the one fighting for us, and somehow I was the problem. Then came the first real crack. I walked into the guest room one morning to grab some laundry and saw a small gift bag on the dresser. Inside was a silver charm bracelet with a tiny engraved heart that read, "For you, Love D." I froze. My husband hadn't given me a gift in months. When I confronted him, he said it was just a token of appreciation for Emily. Just a thank you. Just harmless. But nothing about it felt harmless anymore. I didn't know it then, but that bracelet was the first warning shot of a storm that was about to wreck everything. After that bracelet incident, something inside me changed. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Every text tone, every quick errand, every shift in his voice when her name came up. It was like living with a stranger who shared my husband's face, but not his heart. One night, Daniel didn't come home until almost midnight. He said Emily had a scare, that she felt cramps and needed someone to take her to the hospital. He looked tired, concerned, even heroic in a twisted way. I wanted to believe him, but the smell of women's perfume on his hoodie said otherwise. It wasn't mine. It wasn't even the kind of scent I'd ever wear. It was sweeter, floral, young. A few days later, Emily started acting differently too. She'd text me less, show up looking too comfortable in her role, like she was part of his family, not just helping it exist. She'd giggle when Daniel joked, touch his arm a little too long, and look at me with eyes that said she knew something I didn't. Then I found the messages. Not snooping. I was looking for a file on his laptop and stumbled upon a thread of text saved under work contact. My heart nearly stopped. It wasn't work. It was Emily. The messages started innocent. "How are you feeling today?" But soon became emotional, intimate, and deeply personal. He told her she was strong, beautiful, and glowing. She replied that she'd never felt this seen before. One message from him read, "I never expected you to mean this much to me." I confronted him that night, shaking, barely able to breathe. At first, he denied everything, said I was reading too much into friendly messages. But when I showed him the one where he called her the best thing that ever happened to him, his silence was the confession I didn't need words for. He finally whispered, "I didn't plan this. It just happened." I stared at him, realizing the man I loved had fallen for the woman carrying my baby. The irony was so cruel it almost made me laugh. I thought I'd hit rock bottom that night, but I had no idea the real betrayal hadn't even started yet. After that night, everything between us turned cold, tense, like living in a house made of glass. Every sound, every word felt like it could shatter something. Daniel slept in the guest room for space, but we both knew what that really meant. He wasn't just creating space, he was saving it, for her. Emily kept her distance for a while, probably out of guilt or fear. But once she entered her third trimester, Daniel started visiting her again. He said it was for the baby, but I stopped asking questions because every answer hurt more than the last. I'd see his car parked outside her apartment after work, sitting there for hours. Sometimes he wouldn't come home until morning. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. When the baby shower came around, Emily insisted on hosting it. I tried to stay calm, reminding myself she was the surrogate, not my enemy. But when I walked into her house that day, I froze. The living room walls were covered with photos, ultrasound pictures, baby bump selfies, and a framed shot of her and Daniel smiling together at a doctor's appointment. My name wasn't on anything, not even the welcome baby banner. I felt invisible in a story that was supposed to be mine. Later that night, after everyone left, I overheard Daniel on the phone. His voice was soft, almost pleading. I promise, once the baby's here, we'll figure everything out. I didn't need to hear the rest. I already knew who he was talking to. When the contractions started, he rushed to the hospital before I even got the call. I arrived hours later, exhausted, shaking, praying I'd at least be the first to hold my child. But when I walked in, Emily was in tears of joy, Daniel beside her, cradling the baby like they were a family of two. And then, the moment that broke me completely, she turned to him and said, "Do you want to hold our baby now?" I stood there, numb, staring at them like a stranger watching her own life from the outside. The nurses didn't know what to say, neither did I. Because deep down, I realized something horrible. The baby I dreamed of for years wasn't coming home with me. The days after the birth felt like living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I went home to a nursery that had taken me months to decorate. A tiny crib, soft pastel walls, everything ready for the baby that was now with someone else. The silence in that room was unbearable. I sat in the rocking chair and cried until there was nothing left in me. Daniel barely came home after that. He claimed he was helping Emily recover, but I knew better. I saw the photos online, her smiling in a hospital gown, him holding the baby like it was the happiest day of his life. In one picture, she was wearing the charm bracelet I once found. The caption read, "My biggest blessing." People started talking. Friends who once supported us began pulling away, unsure of what to say. My mother begged me to come stay with her, but I couldn't. I couldn't face the pity in her eyes. I couldn't bear the thought of being that woman, the wife whose husband fell for the surrogate. 2 weeks later, I finally got a message from him. It wasn't an apology. It was a request. He said he was moving in with Emily temporarily to help with the baby and asked if I could send over some of the baby items from the nursery. I stared at my phone, shaking. The audacity was unreal. But it got worse. A month later, I received an invitation in the mail. Cream envelope, gold lettering. My name beautifully printed on the front. I opened it and almost laughed. It was a wedding invitation. Daniel and Emily were getting married. I thought it had to be a joke until I saw the RSVP card and a small handwritten note inside. It said, "We hope you can find it in your heart to attend. Closure would mean a lot for everyone, especially the baby." And as if that wasn't enough, a few days later, Daniel called. His tone was casual, almost friendly. "Since you've always been the one with the savings," he said, "I was wondering if you could help cover some of the wedding expenses. For closure, you know?" I hung up. No words, no tears, just silence, the kind that happens right before something inside you breaks forever. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wedding invitation, the ink blurring every time my eyes filled with tears. My heart wasn't just broken, it was humiliated. Everything I had ever given, every piece of myself, was now being paraded around as someone else's happy ending. The next morning, I packed a small suitcase and drove to my mother's house. I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't owe him that courtesy anymore. My mother didn't ask questions. She just hugged me like she knew words would make it worse. For days, I stayed quiet, letting the reality sink in. I had lost my husband, my baby, and my peace, all in one blow. But grief has a strange way of turning into strength when there's nothing left to lose. I started therapy, went back to work, and stopped checking their social media. My lawyer handled the divorce. The day it was finalized, Daniel texted me a single line, "I hope one day you'll forgive me." I didn't reply. Months later, I heard through a mutual friend that Emily and Daniel actually went through with the wedding. They even took a professional family photo with the baby, matching outfits, glowing smiles, the picture-perfect lie. And though it stung, I didn't cry. For the first time in a long time, I realized I didn't envy them. I pitied them. Because no matter how hard they tried to rewrite the story, deep down, they both knew how it began. With deceit, with betrayal, with a woman's heartbreak as the foundation of their so-called love. Years have passed now. I've rebuilt my life, piece by piece. I bought a small condo, started volunteering at a children's center, and found joy in places that didn't require anyone else's approval. I'm not bitter anymore, but I am wiser. Sometimes people tell me I'm strong. I smile, but the truth is, I wasn't strong. I just didn't have another choice. And whenever I see a story online about surrogacy or infidelity, I can't help but whisper under my breath, be careful who you trust. I hired her to give us a child, but instead, she took my husband and my peace. I'll never make that mistake again. The end. Please like and subscribe for more interesting stories like this. What do you think of this story? Please comment below.